So if you're in front of a crowd and you have fans or people watching you, or a video camera, or a live TV or something, you're on a news network, I think there is some of that debate. Or if you're going into a debate, right? Even going into a debate, you want to listen better. But I think there is some of that, okay, let's win. There's a little bit of winning feeling, and winning becomes good if you're factually correct and if you have 5 arguments to their every one, so others can learn. But for 99% of the time when we're not being watched or recorded, I think the intention you were talking about of let's listen, let's learn, let's be precise and of what we're trying to communicate, and maybe there's something this person knows that I don't. Let's build on each other's ideas rather than I want to win and be right and not learn anything from this other than I can be factually better than you.
Yeah. And like, exactly what's the intent? Is the intention to get to know them or to open up, be vulnerable with that person? Is it to even potentially show them that you have a different perspective, right? And maybe we can look at these two perspectives side by side and get an understanding that we have different experiences, and that because of our different experiences, we have these different beliefs, which aren't which doesn't invalidate one another. It's just that we have different experiences.
Right.
And that, like, this is like a perfect transition, actually, or like perfect introduction into like the story that I was going to say. So this past weekend, I went to
Half Moon Bay.
And at first the waves, it was super choppy and
Jaunty inside joke there.
Yeah, inside joke. No, so like on Saturday I went out with students who they wanted to practice. I actually spent 8 hours with them. It was like really, it was a lot of time. But there was like 7 of us. Yeah, there were 7 of us, and I split them into 2 teams. I went with one group of 3, and then the other group of 3 went out, and we were walking around Lake Merritt in Oakland, and approaching strangers, practicing our social skills, and just having trying to have good conversations, meet people, and have these types of experiences where we learn stuff, right? It's not just about learning the skills, but also about learning about the people and learning, and empathizing and making connections. And so my group, we had worked our way on one side of the lake, and the other group was on the other side of the lake. And it was probably about like 4 hours in or 5 hours in. And we ended up walking to one side of the lake. And after we had seen like a whole march of like Black Lives Matter protesters, it was like 1,000 people marched in the opposite direction. So we're figuring like, we'll just go over here and maybe there's just people walking around, hanging out, whatever. So we get onto this part of the lake where there's this big, it's kind of like these cement like benches that span for about 100 yards, and there's like 3 of them. And so it's like kind of almost like a stepped level amphitheater with like 3 levels, and then it looks out into the lake. And there were a bunch of people here. There's a bunch of people here, and first thing I noticed, there's a DJ playing music. There were people with like solo cups. They were like drinking. People were smoking and drinking, and it was a very social environment. It seemed like a party. I was like, great. This is like our social, like this is like the replacement for like going to a bar right now, because like people are here being social in this moment.
Must have felt good.
I mean,
if you haven't seen it for a while.
Yeah, it did feel really good. And we're like, yeah, like let's meet some people. And it was all these people, majority were Black people, and they were at the tail end of their protest, and so they were just like hanging out. The DJ was there or whatever, and they had a teepee. There was like all kinds of stuff. There were like snacks and drinks and snacks and music and people hanging out. So I'm sitting, I go sit down on one of the walls on the little seating area. And I'm like, all right, guys, have at it. Go approach some people. And so the three of them go and approach this group that was behind me. And so they're about like 10, 15 feet away. And they started talking to this one lady with a sign. And then she had her boyfriend there. And like another lady was on her left. And so she had the sign. They were like talking to her about that, I guess. And I wasn't really paying attention. I was just kind of looking at body language and stuff. Well, about 2 minutes in, I walk over to them to see what's going on. And I have my sunglasses on, and these bad boys right here. So I have my sunglasses on. They're dark. You don't see my eyes or anything. It was sunny out.
Very cool.
And and so I'm just watching. I'm just observing. And the lady that they're talking to, she is kind of like, looking me up and down and like looking at the other two. And I'm just like kind of looking at the students and kind of looking around. I can't really hear what they're saying because there's music and I'm not in the conversation already. And she like points me out. She's like, "You're giving me weird vibes." And I was like, "What?" And she's just like, whatever, goes back to the conversation. She's like, "I like you guys. I like it. This one I don't like," to me. And I was just like, what's going on?
Whoa.
And like, I kind of tried to like get into the conversation. I was like, what's going on? And she's like, "Are you a cop?" And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "You got your sunglasses on and like, like stiff or whatever." I was like, "I'm just like looking. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what your conversation's about or anything." And they like had ended their conversation, and she kept like coming at me. And I'm like, "Look, I don't," and I sat down right next to her, and I'm like, I took my sunglasses off. I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, talk to me. What's going on?" And so she's like, "You come up here, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Oh, well, do you know what we're doing? Did they tell you what we're doing?" And she was like, "No." I was like, "Oh, we're doing our we're practicing our social skills, like meeting people and stuff." And we kind of like explained it, and she's like, "Oh, that's really cool." And then she like, it kind of turned, and she was like, wait, so you're their awkward teacher. and like, and you came in thinking that you could come here and talk to people? And I was like, well, like we were like all around the lake, and I live here. I was like, we're all around here and like talking to people also, all day. And she starts coming at me like, "That's so inappropriate. You are out of pocket for coming here to our Black Lives Matter protest, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "We're just here to like meet people." She's like, "No, you're practicing. You're running a social experiment." And then she called it social integration, which was not a good, like, I didn't want to follow that thread at all. Like, to call it a social integration, not appropriate.
Right.
But I think she just kind of didn't, that was just like, it wasn't something that she was thinking about. But and she had a lot of tension, right? Like this lady had so much tension. I felt like I was like, and she was like coming at us like argue, being very argumentative and stuff. And we're just like, "Oh, we're here just meeting people. We're like trying to like, we're practicing our social skills, like, but we're here to like make friends and like, make connections." And she was like, "Oh no, this is so inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. You should have gone to if you wanted to go to the protest." I was like, "We didn't even try to come to the protest." She's like, "Well, if you wanted to go to the protest, you should have gone to the one in Berkeley. There's tons of white people over there." And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
And yeah, so she had a lot of tension, and I was like, by this time, one of the students had to go home, so he had already left. So it was just me and two other students, and like, I was like, I got them into this mess, so I'm gonna take the brunt force of it and get us out of it. And so I just took over the conversation for my students, and basically because what we teach at Jaunty is all like it's all behavior level stuff, right? It's all the behaviors that make an attractive person, all the behaviors that help you get along with people interpersonally. But what's on top of that is culture, and we don't do culture stuff. This is not my realm of expertise. This is not my thing, right? Like, to anything about like the Black Lives Matter protests or anything, or like, this is not my thing. But one thing I do know about culture is that it can be an amplifier of a feeling, right? Like, if you are in a cultural event at a specific time, surrounded by people of your culture doing, participating in this event, like this Black Lives Matter protest, your feelings around what's going on in that moment are going to definitely be revolving around what that cultural movement is about. So she had a lot of like pent up tension, sadness, anger, all around what she was protesting about. And it just came when there was something that wasn't in line with what was going on in her culture. She felt that like it was and it was coming from me, a white guy. She felt like it was like coming in as an attack on her, or like on their culture, and it was like a disrespectful thing. And so I had to take this brunt force attack from this lady, and she was like, and it wasn't like an attack. She's like, she kept on saying, I'm coming down on you hard, but like, you're lucky. Like, I'm telling you how it is. Like, other people might not take it so well, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I kept reframing it. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think this is a great conversation. and what I kept on doing was just restating our intentions and letting her vent out that like aggression and that anger and that frustration that she had. Because when she was in that moment of like this high tension from all this protesting and everything, thinking about all the Black lives that have been lost due to law enforcement unjustly and things like that, she's at this high tension. She only has so much emotion that she can hold in, and she can't take in anything more. So I had to let her vent until I could come in with my intentions, show her what we were trying to do, and then she could accept that. And what ended up happening was we had like this really long conversation. It was about an hour long of a really tough, like high tension conversation where she kept coming down on me. And I was just like, look, I'm sorry if I offended you, or if we offended you, or, culturally, this wasn't our intention. Our intention was to make friends and like get other perspectives and stuff. And and then I kept turning it back around. Like, and this is a great opportunity right now, like having this conversation. I love this conversation. And this is exactly what we wanted. And so it kept reframing. And slowly, like, she started calming down. But a quarter way through our conversation, a TV reporter came by with a camera and a microphone. He's like, oh my gosh, you have this conversation, or like, I'm going to get in on this conversation. And I did a counter interruption thing. This was in front of the students. I did a counter interruption. I was like, hey, we're having a really, really important conversation. No. And, and he like,
Nice.
and he's like, oh no, but like I'm not gonna say anything. I'll just put the microphone right here. He's like, he asked, do I have permission? And like, the lady gave him permission. I didn't say anything. And so so he just put the microphone down. And so it might be on TV somewhere at some point in time.
Amazing.
But we had this like really, really, really tough conversation where it was like, I'm just like, you may have an opposing view of me, or you may have some sort of combative view towards me, but I'm not looking at this like it is a combat. I'm not looking at this like it is some sort of situation where it's negative. I'm just taking in information and like getting to know you and getting to show you a bit of my intentions and my experience. And at the end of it, it turned, it was like, we shook hands. I met her boyfriend and her daughter, and it was like it was kind of an emotional experience, and it was really like, was educational, and it was a good conversation. And like for me, like leaving it, I was like, it's kind of sad that she didn't want me to be a part of her community. Because and you can't make people are going to choose their own paths and their own who they want to associate with, but at the end of the day, like we had a nice civil conversation, and I was saying to the students, they were loving it. They're like, oh my God, you sold me on the masterclass in the assertiveness, like already just from that. And I was like, at the end of the day, like I could have, if I were a different person, with different skills, I could have left that entire place thinking, screw the Black Lives Matter people. They're jerks. And because of that experience, and because I was able to like take it in and just talk to this lady and kind of reframe it. This is a conversation that we can keep having. It doesn't have to, I don't have to take your criticisms and then leave. I can take your criticisms, talk to you, tell you my intentions, and then you can understand where I might be coming from. And then and if you're open to my criticisms, then we can talk then, but, and just keep it going. But, if I were any different person, I could have just like left and been all upset, and
Wow.
nothing would have come out of it. Nothing good. Right. But so using an assertiveness and that mindset of like, I'm here to learn in these conversations, and like just being open to seeing other people's point of view and to express myself. All I want to do is express myself. And that was a crazy experience that I had this last weekend.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's at the heart of everything going on. You were in the middle of, the point of this is having that type of dialogue. And I feel like she probably, hopefully feels great about being able to communicate that to you. And you gave her a safe place to do it in some sense while venting. One little misstep, it could have blown up in the wrong way because it's such a touchy subject, but you handled it really well. So great job. And I think you're right. It's all about that intention.
Yeah. Like I don't want to have to step on eggshells.
Yeah. No,
right? Like,
no, that's not what being assertive is. It's about being truthful to yourself, and the mindset of that's what I was about to say, the mindset of respecting rather than thinking about it as me against you, or the second you start putting yourself in this is a confrontation, it becomes a confrontation because you almost look for those things, and she was on that side, it sounded like, up front, and you just kept your stance of, this isn't a confrontation, this is a conversation. And
yeah.
that's really powerful. It'd be great. It's cool that hopefully a lot of that was recorded by that news channel, and that can be.
I was like wishing, I was like, man, I wish we could have recorded this in some way,
You might be able to. Well, it was recorded. Maybe you can call them and ask them about it. But